Well, good morning. This is James Schreiber. Going to talk today about a topic that I get a lot of emails on, and texts and tweets, and just generally people ask me. Sometimes I'll be out at a restaurant or sitting at the local Starbucks or another establishment, and people will start to see what I'm doing and say, strike up a conversation. And ultimately, the conversation kind of ends up being something like this. I have a phone interview with XYZ in a week, or I have a phone interview with a company or prospective employment. And what can I do to get ready for that? And I really find that this question comes a tremendous amount from what I would call senior executives, senior leadership in companies. You know, these are people who are ingrained every day in pushing their department or pushing their project. They have subordinates that do a lot of the mundane tasks for them. They delegate on a regular basis. They have to. But when it comes to, and they're used to being in charge. So they're used to sitting there and taking charge or command over the conversation. And so putting them in a position where all of a sudden now they're the ones that are being kind of questioned, interviewed in a certain perspective, kind of puts them on their heels of their feet in some way. Because what I find is when it comes to selling their story, in a lot of cases, they fall short for many reasons. One, maybe their story is so detailed that they really can't break it down into a synopsis for the person on the other end. Two, it could be that they're not used to telling their story. They are in a position where they just assume people know who they are, know their background, and they don't have to kind of tell people about themselves in order to move forward within the process. It's a given because of their title. It's a given because of who they represent for the company. So when this happens, I have a couple tips that I give people to help them prepare for the initial phone interview. And this is for a phone interview. I'll be doing a series on inner person, person to person, on-site interviews in my upcoming podcast. But so the first thing I always tell people is, what is your story? You know, we used to say back in the day, back in the old days, when I started out in New York, that you needed to have a elevator pitch, a 3-minute elevator pitch. You know, if you're meeting someone on the elevator and they say, "Hey, I'm so and so. What do you do? I'm so and so. What do you do?" You'd have that 3 minutes to be very precise, succinct, understand what you were trying to say and get that point across, and hopefully make a connection. Well, it has to be the same way when you open the conversation, when that talent acquisition professional says, "Well, John, Mary, tell me about yourself. You know, how did you get from A to D? Talk about the transitions in your career." And a lot of people stutter when that happens. They're used to not really having to answer this question, not really having to explain why they started out here and moved to there, and then from there moved to there, and talking about their story. Because the best way we can provide any information on ourselves, the best way just in general when we're speaking to people, is to actually create a story, to engage the listener's interest in what we're saying and ultimately the point we're trying to get across. So have that story. and have it flow. Look at your resume that the person on the other end of the phone has, or your profile on LinkedIn, or whatever that might be. Read it. Read it to yourself before the call. Understand why you started at this company, how you went to that company, what were the parameters that led you from A to B to C to D to E, and have a nice conversation, a flow. Who can you practice with? And I say this all the time, practice with someone. If you have no one to practice with, or you don't feel comfortable practicing with anyone, maybe you're looking for a position and you do not want your employer to know about it, so you're very secretive, and you do not want to practice with a close confidant at the company, maybe your best friend, because you're just a little worried that if the word got out there, it might affect your career with your present firm. Understood. Then have a conversation with yourself in the mirror, or set up your FaceTime or video or whatever and look at it and have that conversation. Because I've always believed that when you can see yourself in the mirror and you see your facial expressions when you're talking, it actually creates a better conversation than simply sitting on the phone and staring at a wall. So look in the mirror. Tell your story to yourself. And while you're doing that, look and say, am I stopping? Are my eyes wandering? Does it make sense to me? Maybe talk to your wife or significant other, your partner, your children. Ask them to sit with you and talk about this. Maybe they've never heard your story on how you achieved the success that you did. Second point, and before I close that, but that is an important issue, because you get about a minute, 2 minutes, sometimes not even that, to make that first impression on the phone. You know, talent acquisition professionals, they want to hear your story. They really do. They want the call to be successful for many, many reasons. But if someone gets on the call and they're rambling, they don't seem to really know, they feel like they're hiding something on why they left one company to go to another, or maybe had a mid-career change in professions, they take notes, and sometimes it's really hard to get over that first impression, especially when they have to get off the phone and then talk to their senior manager about, well, I just spoke with John or Mary, and here are the positives, here are the negatives. Do I recommend them to go forward? Yes, no, or whatever. So, you know, practice makes perfect. Very few people can go on to a call like that if they're not used to it cold, and just expect to answer questions. And if you're going to do that, it's going to sound like you truly are being interrogated. Have that story, have that flow. Look in the mirror. Talk to people you trust, and let them give you, good advice, critique you, and say, that was an interesting call you and I had at the end. Or maybe you should talk more about X and not as much about Y. Many, many times people have emailed me after the initial interview and said, I forgot to tell you, it isn't in my resume, but I did do ABC, or I used to work at so-and-so, but I never put it in there. And why that's good and it's helpful, it does beg to the question of, if it was so important, why did you, kind of forget about it when we were talking? But that's the first thing. Be comfortable with your story. It's your story. You should be proud of your career. And I say this all the time. I look at people's resumes or CVs and I say, wow, that is an impressive piece of paper in front of me. Talk to me about it. Tell me how you were able to achieve such success in this amount of time. And I love to hear those stories. I love to hear people talking about themselves, about what their challenges were, how they fought through those challenges to get to where they are today. And then that brings me to my second point. What are you looking for in your next position? It's a question almost every single talent acquisition person will ask, a recruiter will ask. What are you looking for in your next position? If you had the chalkboard and could create the job description, what would be your ideal next role? Understand that and think about that, because again, you only get one chance to answer that question. And some people think it's a setup. Well, if I don't say X, then they're going to think I don't want to do that. Or if I say X and they're really looking for Y or Z, then they're going to pass on me. I come across this like, look, again, it's your life. It's your career. It's your next steps. Don't worry about what I think on the other end of the line. Tell me what you want. Tell me what your next ideal position would be, what you're looking for in your next role. Because ultimately, for you to be successful, that's what my job is to match you as much as I can along those factors. But you have to be straightforward and honest up front. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So really, they always talk about, especially now in politics, right? They talk about, why do you want to be president? And you get one chance to ask that. Or why do you want to run for office? Well, this is kind of the same thing. What are you looking for in your next position? And then the other part of that question is, why are you looking for something new, or possibly looking for something new? I can tell you, and most professional recruiters will tell you, that 8 times out of 10, the person will say, well, I'm very happy with where I'm at. But look, the fact that you're on the call with us tells us that there is some factor not ringing the bell for you. And so you're keeping your options open. So just be honest. And whatever that might be. No growth. Maybe it's money. Maybe it could be a plethora of things. But you have to be in a position to have that conversation right away. This is why I'm possibly looking to make a move. Whatever it is. And own it. Own it. Period. It's who you are. I think one of the final things I want to say, and this is important, and I'm going to jump back here. It's your career. You made the progressions. You went to school. You got your degrees. You entered the workforce. And you are creating your life. All the talent acquisition person on the other end of the line can do is help you and be honest with you on whether maybe this role is not the right role for you based on all those parameters, or maybe it is, and help you along the way. But ultimately, it's your decision. Everything about the interview process, the hiring process, the search process, the recruitment process, you are the talent that a company might be looking for. But ultimately, the interview is 2 ways. As much as somebody is interviewing you to see if you're right for that position, you should also be interviewing them or having that conversation to pull information out of them to see if you feel they are right for you to spend the next 1 to 3 to 5 to 7 years of your life partnered with that firm or company. But in order to get to that point, you really have to be able to say, this is who I am, this is why I'm looking, and this is what I'm looking for to make that move. And say it with confidence and be professional. And when they ask you, can you give me some examples? Have those examples. Again, you lived it. You've done it. Be able to explain it. And it does take practice. Most people are not professional job seekers. the problem I've seen, or the issue I should say, that I've seen from time to time to time, is that in a lot of cases, senior executives just feel they can do it. They can get on that call, no problem. And what throws them is when those questions come around. Why are you looking to leave? Oh, I love my company. Oh, it's great. But there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, my time here has been very productive. I really enjoyed it. I think I left this department, or I would be leaving this department in better shape than when I arrived. But now it's time for me to explore XYZ options. And if they're not out there, they're not. But this is what I'm looking for. These are the parameters that I'm looking for. And based on my background, my expertise, and my skill set, I believe I'm a good fit for this role. This is why. And then see where it goes. Because as long as you're open, as long as you're honest, as long as you're straightforward with everything, if it's a fit, then it's being a fit based on true factors. Because you certainly wouldn't want to, I'm not saying make things up, but fudge kind of what you really are looking for just to get the position. You're not going to be happy. The company's not going to be happy. And it probably won't last very long as well. Well, I hope this was helpful. And I'm happy to go into more detail if people would like me to. You can always reach out to me via email at james.schreiber@grtas.com. That's james.schreiber@grtas.com. You can check my website at www.grtas.net. Website is .net, email is .com. You can tweet me at the Jim Schreiber, at the Jim Schreiber on Twitter. And I'm on LinkedIn at Jim Schreiber CSP if you want to connect as well. And again, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And please send me some ideas for my next conversation. Take care now. Remember, time to think, time to act. Goodbye.